Now you've ruined my appetite. Go fetch me something to read.
Oh, okay. How about this?
The Dark Brotherhood is the assassin organisation in Tamriel, and has proved throughout its history that no one is safe from the Black Hand, not even emperors. The Black Hand has caused fear throughout Tamriel's history, and the organisation's association with Sithis, a primordial being, somewhat implies that it is one of the oldest in the continent, but this isn't the case. In fact, the Dark Brotherhood didn't always worship Sithis, and its origins brand it as a somewhat more famous spin-off from a jealous predecessor. As a spin-off, the Dark Brotherhood suffered a great deal of change as it tried to differentiate itself from its roots. Let's look at the Dark Brotherhood's origins first, and it probably doesn't surprise you that the Morag Tong, Tamriel's other massive assassination organisation, had something to do with it. For context, the Morag Tong, also known as the Foresters Guild, is an assassination organisation out of Morrowind, and according to some generic dialogue in Morrowind, the game, and the book Night Mother Rituals, the Empire sanctioned the Morag Tong for executions and considered it a legitimate guild, given how ingrained into the country's culture the guild is, and its strong connections to Morrowind's government. It's believed that the Morag Tong originated under the guidance of Mithala, the Daedric Prince of Obfuscation and Secrecy, whom they called Night Mother and Black Hand Mithala. Hopefully now you're getting a little bit of an idea of where the Dark Brotherhood came from. You see, the Morag Tong is said to be as old as Morrowind itself, being founded in the Merithic era, although it wasn't until the First Era that the Morag Tong became officially sanctioned to operate in the province. On the other hand, the Dark Brotherhood's origins can be traced back far later, in the Second Era, according to the Brothers of Darkness, stating that it sprang from the Morag Tong, which was described as a religious order. During this time, Mithala encouraged her followers to commit ritual murders, and at the start of Morag Tong's history, the organisation was scattered and unorganised until they found leadership, but this is where things get a little confusing. Greater organisation within the Morag Tong came when the Night Mother arrived into the picture, and it is said that all leaders of both the Morag Tong and the Dark Brotherhood have been called the Night Mother, although it isn't known whether the Dark Brotherhood have always been under the leadership of the same Night Mother or various individuals bearing the title. Either way, it is believed that the Night Mother is the bride of Sithis, and could also be Mithala, taking on the form of a mortal Dunmer woman. Mithala apparently grows stronger with every murder in her name, and the greater the individual murdered, the more powerful the Daedric Prince grows. You see, the Morag Tong was more of a cult at the start, and it took until the beginning of the Second Era for the group's first recorded assassination, killing potentate Viziju Shaye, and then ruler of the Second Cyrodiilic Empire, carrying on after Remen Cyrodiil's line had died out. We know it was the Morag Tong because the Night Mother at the time wrote Morag Tong in the potentate's blood. So, yeah. We don't need Sherlock for this one. Not a lot more is heard from the Morag Tong for around 100 years, and this relative silence makes it difficult to pinpoint the Dark Brotherhood's exact origins, although it is said that the last living Night Mother resided in Bravil, and bore Sithis 5 children, because apparently the Void itself can still get it on. Unfortunately, his bride wouldn't go on to win any Mother of the Year awards, since she... well, there's no real easy way to put this. She slew her own children so that their souls could go to Sithis. But the people of Bravil, rather reasonably, thought that this was pretty messed up. They killed the Night Mother and burned her house, although being the bride of Sithis has a few perks. 30 years later, some random dude begins hearing the Night Mother's voice, and this guy becomes the Dark Brotherhood's first listener, carrying out the will of the Dreadfather. The Night Mother in Skyrim could be the same one from Bravil, considering how she looks like burned jerky. Huh, I guess Astrid can relate. Dates are, of course, pretty muddled around this time, although the earliest we hear of the Dark Brotherhood is from the Blood Queen Arlimahera, in her journal from 412 of the Second Era, since she and her grandfather often used the organisation. After that, the Dark Brotherhood really made a name for themselves by murdering potentate Saverian Churak, the son of Vasitu Shaye, and every single one of his heirs, thus ending the Second Cyrodiilic Empire and plunging the entire continent into disarray. I mean, that's one way to one-up the Morag Tong. The Mythic Dawn really should have just hired these guys instead of going through all the work themselves. I mean, one Emperor's luck, but two? And on the topic of the Morag Tong, it seems that they are the mortal enemies of the Dark Brotherhood, and the Dark Brotherhood splitting off wasn't exactly amicable. This is in large part due to the difference in nature between the two organisations. The Morag Tong technically have the moral high ground, since they work to keep the peace and honour Mathala, who is worshipped as one of the three good Daedra in Morrowind. On the other hand, the Dark Brotherhood do it for Sithis, the embodiment of everything evil, and a nifty paycheck. It's sort of like the difference between James Bond and Hitman's Agent 47. One kills for Queen and Country, and the other one is currently freelance, making a dime. Now, strangely, at the start, the Dark Brotherhood still worshipped Mathala, before their eventual transition to the Night Mother and Sithis, although this screams to me that the lore got changed between games, since there were Mathala worshippers in Daggerfall, then all on the Sithis train in Oblivion. Also, in the Morrowind Dark Brotherhood sect, there's Severa Magia, who called herself a Night Mother and was the primary antagonist of the Morag Tong storyline. I guess it's implied that she was also the bride of Sithis if this is to be believed. The Dark Brotherhood has always been reliant on the Night Mother for guidance, and when they were without her after the Oblivion Crisis and the recession during Skyrim, things were at their lowest. Killing the Emperor and getting a new listener solves this for the most part, and I'm assuming that the Dark Brotherhood will be on the rise again when we finally get our hands on Elder Scrolls 6.
Here we go.
1 hour later.
Just a few more seconds of mental preparation and I'll be painting this wall.
2 hours later.
I'm getting to the painting.
3 hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
No problem.
Now, the Dark Brotherhood has been through a lot of change to differentiate itself from the Morag Tong, and while it maintains its cult-like elements, despite changing the object of its worship, it is fundamentally a profitable business. Any functioning business requires a decent structure, and the Dark Brotherhood's modern interpretation is pretty interesting in its structure. Just as a disclaimer, I will largely be talking about the versions we see in Oblivion and Skyrim, although Skyrim's Dark Brotherhood is pretty bare bones considering the circumstances. There are 5 tenets, which Astrid abandoned in Skyrim but I assume later get reinstated. 1. Never dishonour the Night Mother. 2. Never betray the Dark Brotherhood or its secrets. 3. Never disobey or refuse to carry out an order from a Dark Brotherhood superior. 4. Never steal the possessions of a Dark Brother or a Dark Sister. And 5. Never kill a Dark Brother or a Dark Sister. To do any of these is to invoke the wrath of Sithis. Assassins must obviously follow these tenets, and they get their targets from those who perform the Black Sacrament, a ritual that will allow the Night Mother to hear an assassination request in the form of a prayer. To do this, someone must make an effigy of the target that is assembled from actual body parts, including a heart, skull, bones, and flesh. This must all be encircled by candles, and the effigy must be stabbed by a dagger rubbed with the petals of the nightshade plant, while saying the plea, sweet mother, send your child on to me, for the sins of the unworthy must be baptized in blood and fear." Then your fantastical email has to go down the HR chain, with the Black Hand making up the leadership group, a name that's probably a carryover from the Morag Tong and Mathala. There's a thumb, the listener, who can hear the Night Mother's commands, 4 speakers for the 4 fingers, who enact the Night Mother's will, and 4 silencers, being the nails of the hand, who are the personal assassins of each speaker. Then there's the Keeper, who looks after the Night Mother, but they aren't officially part of the Black Hand, even if they are high up in the pecking order. And this is the role that Cicero has. Given how short-staffed the Dark Brotherhood is in Skyrim, the listener ends up performing the duties of a speaker as well. And I guess you can consider the Dark Brotherhood initiates as the silencers in this regard. Perhaps Elder Scrolls 6 will help the Dark Brotherhood return to this structure that we saw in Oblivion, although there is always a chance that the organisation could change again, and end up restructuring completely. Who knows? I do hope that the Dark Brotherhood questline remains a highlight of the coming Elder Scrolls games, just like you guys watching and liking these videos remains the highlight of my week. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.
And so the pack was born again, as the wolves of Yarbasker, to rule in life and serve in death, as the moon